Hello, my name's Mark Miller-Stewart and I'm the Executive Director of Beyond Borders. On the 23rd of August 2015, I had the pleasure of welcoming Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon to Traquair House. She came to support the Beyond Borders International Festival and to help us celebrate Scotland in the world and the world in Scotland. She did this by doing two important events. One, a major interview with Alan Little.
What we do here every August under Mark Miller-Stewart's guidance is talk about how Scotland can join in a global dialogue, what a small devolved country like Scotland can be part of a much larger dialogue in cultural diplomacy, in the promotion of human rights, in conflict resolution and so on. Do you have any, what is your view about what is possible for Scotland as it, not as an independent, I'm not going to ask you to imagine you're Prime Minister of an independent country, but as First Minister of a devolved country within the UK?
I think there is a lot possible for Scotland here. I mean, I've just been having a discussion with Mark and some colleagues involved in this area about the reality that the countries that do most around conflict prevention and mediation are actually small countries. And therefore, I think there is huge scope for Scotland to do more as, you know, a host country for mediation efforts. But I tell you one area where, and it comes back to much of what we've been discussing here today, where we can bring to the table something that gives us, in the whole area of conflict resolution and mediation, enormous credibility, and that is our own experience. What we did in the referendum last year was debate and decide a massive constitutional issue that in many parts of the world would have led to incredible bloodshed and violence and conflict. We did it entirely peacefully. Now, that gives us real life experience to bring to bear there. So, as I've said to Mark, I'm very keen as First Minister to look at how we do more and the areas in which we might best bring that contribution to bear. But there is massive potential for us as a small country to be a massive voice for peace in the world.
And the second event was to launch the Women in Conflict Peace Initiative, developed by Beyond Borders and the European Institute of Peace. I'll leave it to her to tell you about that initiative, but it does signal both her and her government's growing commitment to supporting women peacemakers around the world.
Both Martin and I are extremely grateful that Nicola has come all the way. She's driven all the way from Glasgow and she's going back to Glasgow tonight to not simply talk about domestic politics and the future of Scotland, but also international politics, the role of women can play in the promotion of peace and conflict resolution. And it's with that that I'm going to ask Nicola to formally say a few words.
This initiative is all about capturing the experiences of women caught up in conflict, whether that is as victims, resistors, peacemakers, and sometimes, of course, even as combatants. And all of these different roles are portrayed very effectively at many of the events that are taking place here this weekend at Traquair, and also many of the events that are taking place at the Edinburgh International Festival, which of course is underway right now as we speak. And together they are very, very powerfully highlighting the courage of women that are battling injustice right across the globe. But this Women in Conflict initiative, as Mark has indicated, is intended to have a much more lasting significance as well, one which goes beyond the events of this month. Women from different conflicts from around the world are helping Beyond Borders and the European Institute of Peace to design what will be Scotland's first Women's Peace Fellowship programme. It's now 15 years since the United Nations Security Council passed Resolution 1325. Resolution 1325 urged the international community to give women a greater role in formal peacemaking processes. Now, since then, progress has been made, but much more needs to be done. And last year, Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon called on all member states, civil society and warring parties to redouble their efforts in this regard. And I think that is hugely important, because women are not just the primary victims of conflict, but they all too often are. But women can also be the primary healers of conflict. Women often play a fundamental but underreported role in bringing communities back together after conflict. Peace isn't just made in formal conferences. We might say it's all too rarely made even in formal conferences. But even peace made in forums like that is not peace that necessarily will last. Long-lasting, sustainable peace is about winning hearts and minds of people in local communities. And that's why I think the role of women is so important. It's important, but it's not necessarily sufficient. We also need women, of course, represented at the formal negotiating table as well. So both of those objectives are important. So this Women's Peace Fellowship programme is all about helping to achieve that aim. As Mark has just indicated, it aims to equip 8 women leaders from conflict-affected regions with the knowledge and skills that are necessary to participate fully in future peace processes. And that's why I'm hugely proud to be backing this initiative today and to add Scotland's voice in saying a very loud yes to peace. And I'm also delighted to be able, as well as launching this initiative today, to be introducing the next session of this festival, which is on women, war and peacemaking. I think that is an absolutely crucial subject to be discussing in a world that continues to be so ravaged by unnecessary conflict. And as we talked about earlier on, the consequences of that conflict is all too evident in the current migrant crisis and in so many other ways. So the importance of this cannot be overstated. And I think the timeliness of this is hugely relevant as well. Just finally, from me, I just want to take the opportunity of congratulating Beyond Borders on the work that it does, because Beyond Borders' efforts to highlight subjects like this is one of the things that makes this event such an extraordinary one. But the impact and the contribution that Beyond Borders as an organisation makes to these subjects and to the advancement of the kind of things we're talking about here is hugely important. And I just want to take that opportunity to congratulate Mark and colleagues on that. So it gives me huge pleasure to formally launch this hugely important Women in Conflict Peace initiative and enjoy the next session and indeed enjoy the rest of the festival. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, Nicola's visit to Traquair was a remarkable visit. She took time out of a busy schedule to come all the way to the Scottish borders in order to signal her interest not just in international affairs generally, but in particular in support of women peacemakers from around the world. And I think this just reflects the Scottish Parliament and the Scottish Government's growing commitment to making its voice heard in international affairs, particularly in the field of conflict resolution and peace building.